Drunken Warriors, welcome to the Brothers Gadenne podcast, where we prepare you for the fury of emergencies, disasters, and the battles of everyday life. Frelda Verisum. Let us begin. Awesome. Well, welcome back.
Here we are again. Been a while.
It's been a hot minute. Not going to lie. There's been people asking me, actually.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Where's the podcast been? Mainly just, friends who listen to it. But it's good to know that some people were listening.
Yeah, or someone.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah, not just Bulge.
Just not Bulge.
Someone else but Bulge. Multiple people.
Good to hear.
But yeah, we're back. We've been obviously on hiatus from this. We made a bit of a decision, just a way explanation why we haven't been here for a while.
Yeah. It's good.
Made a bit of a decision to kind of sharpen the saw, figure out some stuff, make sure we'd lined up what podcast we're going to do when, because it was a bit ad hoc.
Yeah.
Just trying to make things a little bit more professional for you here.
We'll slowly level it up. We won't say we're all the way there just yet, but we'll slowly level it up.
Yeah, we'll get there. All right, so what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to talk about the art of navigation.
Nice.
Navigation, I feel, is a really important subject. It's something that everyone needs, everyone uses, some better than others, but it's one of these life essential skills that people have used since the dawn of time.
Yeah. So we're going to delve into that a little bit. We're going to sort of do a bit of a deep dive into navigation, talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about the history of navigation, how it came about, and how we're a bit reliant in the modern world on technological navigation.
Yeah.
And
And maybe a little bit about some of the neuroscience and the physiology of navigation.
Right, yeah. How we evolved to actually move around spaces.
Indeed. Super interesting.
Cool. Well, let's jump into it then, without any further ado. Maybe just touching on, for you, what's the importance of navigation? How do you see this applying in the modern world, and especially when we think about what we're training people to do, which is operate in and around emergencies or disasters?
Sure. I mean, look, it is something that we utilise. People need to navigate on a daily basis, whether it's getting from home to the shops, for getting yourself to work and back safely in an organised manner, or if you're out there in the field hunting, finding your way around in the bushlands or some totally new environment on your travels. It's something that people use all the time without thinking about it, but it's something that can also be improved on. That it can involve endless improvement, and the things out there to help you with this navigation, from the basic skills that you have probably on you right now, working all the way up to some of the advanced technological things that we have available in this day and age, should and could be explored.
Yeah. Definitely. Like when I'm teaching the courses, I quite often ask the question to people, a very simple one, talking about situational awareness. You're in a mall, you finished your shopping. Who here knows exactly where their car is once you've finished your shopping? And generally on most courses, and I'm teaching to, civilians who are not thinking about disasters a lot, I would estimate it's probably about 70 to 80% of people go, yeah, I don't, I quite regularly finish my shopping and go, where's my car? So even on a micro kind of scale there, we're not talking about navigating over large distances, but even in a very small area contained, creating those mind maps, having that memory of where we've been, having that sense of direction, quote unquote, is or can be a bit lacking, I think.
Yeah. And not just that, just working your way around known spaces, but how to work your way around unknown spaces. So when you travel to a new environment, new place, stopping that potential panic, stopping you getting into a potential disaster. And a lot of this, what we talk about anyway, is like, it's not really getting yourself out of disaster, but how to stop getting into it in the first place and creating a resistant mindset by having the confidence of being able to go, right, I either know where I am and where I need to get to, or I know how to figure that out and get to where I need to get to.
Fun little game for everyone who's listening along right now. I like to do this to people every now and then. I want you to, right now, point to north. Point to north. You might be sitting inside. You might actually know what way your house is orientated or wherever you are is orientated. If you're outside, there'll be clues and things like that. But it's just something to start getting the brain thinking. And I like to do it quite often.
I think it's a great little game because have a think. All of you guys that can't navigate, what's the first thing your GPS tells you? Turn north and drive 600 meters. And you're going to go, where the bloody hell's the compass in my car? Where, it's not going to tell you where north is. It just tells you to turn north. It's an assumed knowledge that you know where north, east, south, and west is at any given time.
So we will touch on a little bit of the GPS type navigation that where most people are quite used to, when it comes to like Apple Maps, Google Maps, or some similar variety of that, and how that is kind of changing the way we navigate. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about the history of navigation. I think a lot of people, this is kind of my experience of it. I talk to them about navigation. They go, I don't have a sense of direction. I just give up on it. And I'm always a little bit bemused by that. I think as the human animal that we are, we should have an innate sense of direction. We should roughly know how to navigate. We maybe haven't learnt the techniques, but it's somewhere in there. We would have had to have evolved to do this. So we're going to touch on some of the history now of technological navigation.
Yeah. So going back throughout, like I said, at the dawn of time, people have had the need to navigate from everywhere, whether they've been walking, sailing on the ocean, wherever they've been, there's always been that need. And you look throughout human history, we are travellers. We are nomadic by nature anyway. So we travel all the world. We travel around our own hunting areas in space, and we need to know for where good hunting grounds are, where dangerous areas are, and where the other tribe won't let us go as well. So we need to know these kind of borders. Now, as travellers, some of the furthest back that I can think of is probably the Polynesians and the Vikings and how they used to get around. The Polynesians they still have a term for it today, it's called wayfinding, and it's a specific task for a specific person within the group or in the tribe. And they get around on island hopping from place to place using the wayfinders and the wayfinders' skills. The way they do that, there's a vast combination of things that they use, but they use telltale signs to get around and find how they get their location. They use the stars. They figured out that the stars, although they generally move, they figured out the pattern of movement of the stars and how they move and what ones that they can use for generalized location. So example of this, like I know in the Northern Hemisphere, yes, you find the Northern Star and you base everything off and around that. But how many people here know how to find north or south in the Southern Hemisphere?
Probably not a lot. It's something whenever I'm staring at the night sky with a group of people, it's something I would like to point out is how to find south. That's for me, that's by far the easiest thing to do within the Southern Hemisphere as far as finding direction by star.
Absolutely. And finding south, if you can find the Southern Cross and the 2 pointer stars, you'll be able to find south, pinpoint that and work your way around from there. Other things they used to use, the Polynesians and their wayfinders, used to use ocean currents, so they knew the timing of the currents and where they flowed around the islands, different wave patterns and how that would push their boats around the islands and how to use the timings of those again. And watching birds. These are one of the best navigators. They navigate vast differences. So utilising other animals and that to enhance your wayfinding ability is a great skill. It's all about observation. And a lot of this about navigation comes back to observation.
Cool. Well, let's talk about Vikings now because, I like Vikings.
Sure.
Sun compass. I think sun compass, and I always think like that's a really cool survival skill. It's something you often taught in survival.
Yeah.
How to find directions by using the sun.
Yeah.
So can you describe that for us?
So using sun compass is about how to use the sun to identify what your location is, and look, using it, because the sun moves in generally the same direction all the time. I say generally, it does move in the same direction all the time, and it creates a pattern. So you can use that pattern of shadows that it creates to build your sun compass. And then you can get your direction and know where to go from there. It gives you those cardinal markers. And once you've got the cardinal markers, you can really navigate across the world. I remember learning how to use the stars and sun compass in Special Forces as part of the survival training. And that epiphany of like, I can now just about find myself anywhere in the world and find where I want to go in the world to, 10 meters sort of space, just with what I have in my head right now.
Yeah. And similar sort of idea. For those who have never built a sun compass before, to me, it's a similar idea as a sundial.
Yeah.
You're tracking the shadow made by an object. So you stick a stick in the ground or whatever, and you do that point, and then you wait X amount of time, it will move, and the direction that it moves in, essentially the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So then you've got that line, that east-west line, that you can start to utilize to find your other directions. What happens if you don't have enough sun?
Good question.
So the Vikings, I love this, and actually, this stuck in my mind. I had read about this, but this really stuck in my mind from the TV show Vikings, where they're navigating Ragnarok in the first season. I think in the first episode, they're navigating from Hedeby to England, and he pulls out a little piece of stone or crystal or something like that, and uses it to kind of enhance the sun in order to track where the sun, like the direction that they're going in.
Yeah,
these sunstones.
That's super interesting. Like they figured out that if you don't have enough sun, that you can use these stones to enhance the light, almost like a magnifying glass, and that way you can still navigate in clouded, low light sort of conditions, which is super interesting. Along with that, look, the other things they use landmarks. So again, like the Polynesians, they use landmarks of knowing what identifier points they had of places they'd travelled before. And they'd still use combinations of, like we talked about before, ocean currents and wave patterns and things throughout that would all encompass or enhance their navigation from the waves to across vast differences where you couldn't see points of land and make it across.
I can't not think of Moana now anytime we think about Polynesian navigation. But I've got a 2-year-old daughter, obviously with the headphones. I had to steal her headphones for this. So if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever.
They go well with your outfit, the pink headphones.
I have no shame. I don't care. Let's talk about more modern varieties of navigation, even though this is, arguably at least 1,000 years old. Magnetic compass. So using the magnetic compass in order to navigate.
Yeah, magnetic compass is like a mainstay. It's like what we base most of our ideals of navigation around. And it's still used quite extensively throughout today is the magnetic compass. But as you said, it is actually kind of old. I believe somewhere in the 11th century that China came up with this idea. And then I don't know if it's more a convergence of ideas that other civilizations have come up with found the same thing of how to use magnetic bits of metal or iron to navigate around the world. And the fact that these magnetic compasses follow along certain lines, magnetic lines that surround the Earth, enabling us to find north and south, particularly in this instance.
Then we move up to the age of exploration. Europeans floating around the world, colonizing everything, using sextants. And I'm going to admit, I got zero clue. I don't know what a sextant is. It looks really cool. I'd love to own one and have it as a display piece, but no idea how it works.
Yeah. Oh, a sextant is more an advanced way of using the stars, and it allows you to give you your longitude around. So again, you're identifying now an identifying mark around on the Earth's compass, on the Earth's place, and how you get around with it. And it just sort of again enhances. So it's still using the stars, using the movement of the stars, and having known distances and time, and adding those components in to really narrow down where you are, giving you more confidence on your travel. Again, it's an awesome bit of like mathematical, technological wizardry that is also kind of basic.
Yep. And I believe it's about the sextant time where we start to get like the coordinate system, the longitude, latitude. So for those who don't know what that is, somebody just got the entire Earth and said, let's cut it up into slices or put imaginary lines on it, which are called degrees. And then we'll cut every degree because some of that is quite a wide distance, especially if you're looking from top to bottom. At the equator, it obviously gets a lot wider. Let's cut that into minutes, and then let's cut every minute into seconds. So it's a grouping of 3 different numbers getting more and more finite. And that's kind of the basis of what we still use now for modern navigation. So from that, we can make maps. So we've got the maps using latitude and longitude and many other different systems as well.
Yep.
We've got magnetic compass, and that's what we used primarily in the military, map and compass for moving around for navigation. And even as cool as our modern systems are, the GPS system or GLONASS or whatever satellite system you happen to be utilizing, the underlying kind of information that it utilizes is still basically Latin long. Like it's still using that kind of mapping. So that kind of takes us up today, is that leap into the digital world.
Yeah, and it's all built off everything that came prior to it as well. So that grid system, you'll see that on your maps everywhere at the moment, and it's still the system or the Latin long system that your GPS uses to tell you where you are.
So that's the history of navigation. Now, what's going on in our heads? As I alluded to before, I think as human beings, we would have had to have done this a lot. Most human beings didn't just sit on their butt in the same spot. We moved around.
Absolutely. And there's been a fair bit of research into this to have a look, because, look, we come across other animals, like alluded to, like birds and elephants and whales and things that navigate around the world to pinpoint accuracy, and they don't have any sextant. They don't have their GPS set up ready to go. They haven't even got too many of their star maps ready to go. Well, maybe they do use stars, but a combination thereof. But there's an actual biological features and that we use them in combination. So I'm going to name a few different features, but we don't use any of them by themselves. We use them in combination. So things that we actually physically find inside our brains that help us navigate. And for some people, they have more of these than others, or just better awareness of how to use them. These are our place cells, our grid cells, and our magnetoreception cells, which is just, we'll get into that in a minute. So the breakdown of these things, they're all placed around the brain. They all interconnect into each other. Place cells are sort of like in the middle of your brain, right at the core in the hippocampus. And hippocampus is where your memories are formed. Everything gets funneled through there to create new memories. And that's basically what these place cells are, is they are mental pictures, and pictures in general, of what you see. And when you're navigating, map to ground type of thing, when you're taking in those key locations, that's what you're mapping in, is these place cells. They take pictures of them, they make a picture inside your head so you can refer back to them at time. And they work well, are in conjunction with our grid cells. Now, grid cells, these form, if you think about it, if you go, all right, I know where place A is and I know where place B is, there's a hill in between, but I don't really know what's around that hill. These grid cells allow you to navigate, sort of breaking up that area into succinct sections and allowing you to move around from A to B without actually seeing the route from A to B. And they work in place in conjunction with your place cells, because you do need some points of measure of some sort. Now, that can be you've visually seen it, or you can do this with a map as well. So you can visualize it with a map. And then finally, our magnetoreception, I say cells for want of a better term. Now, the theory to this is that, or what they found is that there's actually these small cells that have little bits of metal, little bits of iron in them that work like a mini compass in your head. And these are able to use, and this is what, particularly when we're talking about like whales and birds and things like that, these are their primary thing that they use to navigate these last these vast areas across the world. And then as they get closer, they use their grid and place cells to hone in on where they're going. But it's believed that people have these cells as well. Like I said, some more than others. Some of them might be turned on their head and hidden in reverse, but they're there. They're there.
So these three cells or mechanisms that's could be part of the reason why some people have better sense of direction. Some people are better at it, or maybe they've got more of these cells. Maybe these cells are hypertrophied or strengthened because they utilize them more.
Absolutely. And I think, look, there's also a bit of like, it's like a muscle. You've got to train it. You've got to train awareness for this kind of sensation. So if you've been ignoring it your whole life and just with your head down in your phone, then they might not be as developed as someone that has been out and learned to just get a feel for things, where they're going.
There's no little blue line that says turn left in 500 meters when you're out in the bush.
You've just got to figure that one out for yourself.
All right. So people probably listening right now and going, shut up, nerds. Ugh, you're making my head hurt. I don't care. How do I actually navigate? So let's talk about map reading and navigational tools. Let's get more practical with this. As if we're heading out, we're going out to the bush, we're going out to the wilds. What do you actually need to know about maps? Because a lot of people actually don't really know what a map is. They don't know how it works. They don't know the different types of maps that are out there, and certainly wouldn't know how to take that map and then utilize it to navigate.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll give you a few different types of maps today, but they're not the be-all and end-all. There are a multitude of other different types of maps that you can utilize, but these are sort of the mainstay, the three that we're going to give you today, and you can work off them, sort of calibrate anything else you come across and how that compares to these three maps.
Yeah, as a caveat too, if you're listening in and you're thinking like, oh, I just want to learn exactly how to navigate, we're not going to tell you all the ins and outs. That'd be far too long of a podcast. But if you are interested in this, get in contact with us, and I'll give you the details later, because we are currently working on our online courses that we're about to drop, and one of the first ones will be the Art of Navigation course, basic navigation course. And we're doing a bit of a call out for beta testers. So if you want to jump in, be one of the first to test it out, give us some feedback on these courses, let us know. But we'll get on with the basics of navigation.
Absolutely. So, three types of maps that we want to talk about today is topographical maps, road maps, and nautical charts. I mean, these you'll come across most often because this is what you're going to use either on the ground, being the topographical. You're going to be following a road sometimes, or you'll be on the water. Look, maybe not as often, but depends how far you are out there in the ocean.
Yeah, each of these, I think, has advantages and disadvantages. I know a lot of ex-military folk are all about the topographical maps because that's what we use, like almost primarily, unless you did amphib operations as well and you would have used some nautical stuff. But, they've just got this massive hard-on for topographical maps, and they're cool. I like them. I can look at a topographical map and I fully understand it. Like, I know exactly the ground that I'm looking for when I look at it. However, if you don't require that level of information, they can be overwhelming, and they're not necessarily the best thing for urban environments either. And to be fair, most people are used to looking at Google Maps, which is a version of an urban map or a road map.
Yeah. I very much think they cover more road maps and those sorts of things. But topographical maps are excellent, and they fit that space when we were talking about earlier about the grid cells. So being able to sort of like almost visualize working in grid and place cells, they create a visual representation of the world that you haven't yet come across. So usually you'd fill in that space where you'd have to have seen it before. These kind of maps allow you not to have seen that space, but have a good visualization in your head once you understand all the bits and parts that are on them.
Yep. Just lost some light. Road maps, everyone's pretty used to. Nautical maps, we're looking at, that'll have things like depths in there, which is very important when you're cruising around on a boat or a ship, that you don't run into things that are sticking up, little hazards and stuff like that that are known, that are fixed. Obviously, they can't track every single hazard that's out there. And then certain channels and things like that, so little navigational markers and things like that are in there. Again, if you're not going to go out into the water, you probably have no use for a nautical map at all, except to maybe hang on a wall to look cool.
Some of the but some of the obvious difference between these, like your topographical maps, will often have like that grid sort of setup system.
Yep.
Your road maps may have an abridged version of a grid system, maybe just a local grid, might not tie into anything bigger. And your nautical maps, there where I guarantee all the time you'll see lat and long.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing they'll want to talk in.
Yep. So not all maps are created equal either. Like a topographical map can differ very greatly from another topographical map. And so some of those things that you want to check for, if you're going to rush out and buy a map today, some of the things you want to look at, understanding some of those symbols in it, understanding the scale. I think the scale is probably, I would argue, the most important thing that you'd look for in a map. It's probably the first thing that I look for. Like, am I looking for a 1 to 20,000, a 1 to 40,000, whatever it might be.
It'll make a big difference if you're walking 5 kilometres or 50.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that's talking about is, essentially what 1 centimetre or 1 inch for you Americans, what that represents in the real world. So 1 centimetre on that map will equal, X amount, 20,000 centimetres. If I do some maths, what's that, 2 Ks?
Yeah.
All right, let's go with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what that's representing. So you look at that and you go, oh, no, this is a pretty easy walk here. I can just get from here to here. But if you're using a 1 to 50,000 map, all of a sudden, that's a great distance that you're looking at.
Not to mention the amount of detail you'll lose as well. So you can look at that and go, oh, there's nothing between me and there. But in those larger scale maps, there could be a cavern, there could be a hill, there could be a lot of things they won't be represented on that map because the scale is too large.
Yep. So I think that's probably we're not going to delve into fully understanding maps and symbols and things like that. There's a whole heap of other stuff. There's an entire legend on a map, and that usually gives you everything you need to know about that map, including what the symbols mean on that map. So what does the line with X's in it denote on the map? What does the blue line denote? What does a small circle? What does a small hollow circle? What does a large filled-in circle? All these sorts of things. What do they denote on the map? And then the other thing is things like magnetic variance and things like that. So if you are using a compass, you have to know it's not as straightforward as just shooting a bearing on a compass and walking along that line.
No, because apparently the North Pole moves every year.
And apparently it's moving more now.
Okay.
Than it ever has.
Good luck.
So it's moving faster. That's a whole nother story, though.
Yeah, we'll get into that another day.
So you can avoid some common miscalculations and problems with this if you actually pay attention to these things and understand a little bit about what you're looking at there.
Take time to read your legend. It's not just a thing holding the map.
Yep. So we have the technology. Why not use it? We've got GPS. Why bother learning how to navigate with a map?
I think GPSs are a great tool. There's a lot of different ones out there, of different capabilities, of different sizes, different complexity. But if you don't understand what it's based on, what all that technology is based on, like a map, you will find it much more difficult to understand what you're looking at the end of the day. Because the GPS will give you a whole lot of information, and if you can't utilize information, you will come into problems and issues. So you need to know, what it's based off. Not just along that maps don't usually need batteries.
Yeah, well, that's my point. Is in my experience with technology, it always 100% fails when I need it the most. When I am utterly reliant and need it really, really bad, that's the point where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that for me is the big reason why GPS over-reliance is a mistake. And I think you're absolutely right. I agree. GPS is a fantastic tool, and I use it every single day, just about. I use it all the time, and I love it. And I've got multiple different GPS units and ways to access, not just my phone. I've got actual other units that I utilize. I love it, but I also know that it can fail because I've had it happen to me before.
And if you don't have a backup or a backup to your backup, then you might be in a bit of strife.
One is none, two is one, as they say. With this, though, one thing about utilizing a map and compass, for example, to navigate is that I find it deteriorates very quickly. It's a perishable skill of sorts. Like the basics you always remember, but actually practicing it, learning how to do it and then practicing it regularly is something that needs to be done.
Yeah, all skills are perishable over time. So yeah, it does need some practical hands-on. It takes some learning, some teaching, and then some practice to keep it valid and up to date. Because things change, but just keeping it fresh in your mind, being able to utilize it so you're not, again, making gross errors in your time of need. So you need to practice this hands-on training. It will help, and like we sort of discussed earlier, help develop your navigational skills that you build like a muscle. So if you don't use it, that muscle deteriorates, you lose that ability to use it. It'll help with your overall awareness of how to develop your general sense of direction just by doing map reading and navigating.
Just as a quick aside here, one practice that I always do whenever I'm going overseas, and it doesn't really matter if I've been there a lot or not been there at all, is a map recce. And so this is going back to those grid cells that you were saying at the start. This is actually a practice that I do, and I find it is actually tremendous at helping me out when I'm navigating in an area. So I will look at a map, and it could just be Google Maps. That might be the only thing I've got access to. I'm going to city X. I've never been there before. I bring up the map of that city, and I start to look at it. And then I go, right, what are the key locations I need to know there? So I look at, where am I staying? Where am I working or operating? What's the area that I've got to move through? What are the main supply routes? And then maybe you want to delve into it more if you're really security minded and go, where's police stations, where's embassy, where's hospitals, all that sort of stuff. And you can delve into it further and further. But just opening that map up, looking at it is handy. And I'll do that over a series of days, even a week or two out from actually going into that space. Huge little tip there, I think.
Yeah, it sets you up to be visually aware. So you're looking not just for all those key points, but things that you'll see along the way. So what's the tallest building that I could use as a central point to navigate off? Where's the pub? Where's the coffee shop when I'm walking past them? And just sort of knowing what's going to generally be in your area of movement.
Yep. So I think that's a little another little game that people can play. Try that one out. Have a look at a map. Have a look at places you haven't seen before that you might be going to. Even have a look at places you have been to. And I still do this regularly. I'll just open up the map and look at somewhere where a city that I go to quite often, or even my town that I live in. And I'll visualize, as I'm looking at the map, I'll visualize what I would be seeing when I'm on the ground. And it helps connect all these sort of things, this top-down picture, this actual visceral or felt sensory experience that we have when we're on the ground, because those two can be separate sometimes. And I think that's something that really helps out those grid cells.
And I think, that this is a great way to calibrate. Having a look at a map of a known area. It gets your mind calibrated to, okay, if I look at another map now, I've got a better idea of what I'm looking at.
Yep. One of our sub goals is trying to get people fit, ready, prepared for disasters, and hopefully, maybe even get people up to a point where we'd be happy to take them overseas on deployments with us to work on the sorts of things that we do, being the charitable organisation that we are associated with, being XR Med.
Yep.
And wanting to know that people are going to be okay. And one of these key things, I think, is not going, hey, you need to move from this point here to this point here, and knowing that that person can do that safely and competently and will arrive there.
Absolutely, yeah. And like that makes it sort of a key part of the training, or key things that we're looking for is getting able to people that are known you're going to turn up at the right place at the right time.
Yep. So what's your takeaway from today?
Takeaway from today is, look, that last line of the practical hands-on training. I think that cannot be rated enough, that people need to get out there and just start small. Like I said, look at the maps of places you know and then build on that until you're out there navigating with whatever means, whether it be your map and compass, your sextant, whatever you need, out there doing it fairly regularly.
Yep. Yeah, there's always, for me, there's a cost-benefit analysis that we've got to do whenever we're practicing skills. We don't have infinite time. We don't have infinite resources to do these things. So when it comes to a lot of disaster preparedness, prepping, things like that, I am very reluctant to do things that I think would only pay off in case of extreme emergency. So I'm not practicing fighting zombies or something, because the reality is I don't think that's probably going to happen. It's maybe possible, but not probable. Okay. Whereas something like navigation is going to work its ass off in an emergency for me. If I get lost or something like that, if I'm, find myself out in the wilderness, if I have to deal with a disaster, navigation's going to work. But navigation also is so handy every single day of my life. There's always a benefit to practicing this sort of stuff.
Absolutely. If you can be on top of it, it reduces your cognitive load for everything else you might have to do.
All right. Well, as I said, we are currently working on our online course suite, or the first run of them, which will be the basic series. If you're interested in potentially going on the list to jump into these courses, contact us at ragnarok.survival@protonmail.com. Give us your details. Let us know why you'd want to be a part of some of the courses and test them out. And if you're cool enough, we might let you jump on one.
Absolutely.
No, we're obviously looking for feedback, because we want to make these courses the best we can for people before we start selling them off. So, yeah, get in contact with us and keep your eye out for that. Anything else that you'd like to add in there?
I think that's all good. We're good to go. We just got to take it from here and take the next step. So give us a call.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Brothers Gadenne podcast. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, hit like, hit the star, give the thumbs up, do all the good things that help us out, that we can start to spread the message that we're trying to spread to more and more people. So follow along on our different social medias, which will be up and running soon, I promise. And yeah, look out for the website coming soon for more insights into survival, fitness, tactical skills, all that kind of good stuff. But until next time, tools down, targets down, patch out, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
See you next time.
That is the end of this tale. Until next we meet, keep the fires burning. Fra Eldi Verisum.